Welcome back to the True North Podcast. My name is James McKinney. On this week's episode, I've got Ryan Moore with me, and we're going to be walking through a story of our friend Nick McKinney. Nick will join us. We're going to talk about how he was raised and what his walk with God has looked like and how he was just awakened at a True North Base Camp event. And ever since then, he's just been bringing men left and right, and so much so that he became a camp director with True North, and just an incredible story. Nick has been such a blessing to True North Ministries. We love the guy. We really think you're going to love him as well. And so thank you for joining us. Stay tuned all the way through because there's some beautiful, beautiful things that God has done through Nick's story.
Nick.
What's up?
Dude, I'm super pumped to have you here
Me
today.
too, man. I'm glad.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into a bit of your story and what's going on with you now.
Yeah.
Because that's super exciting. But how are you doing, James?
I'm doing really well. Really excited to see Nick. Nick's all the way out from Eufaula, Oklahoma, so we don't get to see you just we don't just to grab lunch or anything. So to have you in on a podcast is so
I've been
special.
missing you guys. I'm excited to be here this morning.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
You've been doing some incredible stuff. I'm excited to dig into that a little bit.
I'm ready to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's gonna be fun.
Yes.
So why don't we just start? Kind of just share with us like how things were growing up and kind of who God was to you then and then
Sure.
how we move forward.
Okay. Well, came from really a pretty regular Christian American home where dad doesn't go to church, mom does. I went when I had to. Had some really neat churches I was a part of growing up, but I never heard and I didn't really receive. I learned a little bit about what love was, but not really about who Jesus was. Not because they weren't preaching it. I wasn't getting it, and I did not want to be there. So even like Easter, like it really hit me just a couple weeks ago at Easter. Like I don't think I fully grasped what Easter was until this last 8 or 9 years. Like I was always mad that Easter came during turkey season because that meant that I couldn't go turkey hunting. Like I was ticked off that I had to go to church because I knew mom was going to make me go on that Sunday. But man, now Christ is so real to me, and Easter is real to me. All the stuff is real to me. So what I missed out on whenever I was younger, I'm catching up on now. Right, the last 8 or 9 years has been great. So anyway, this when I said the average American home, it's because so many people are like, yeah, I know Jesus, but I don't read my word. I'm not in church. I'm not active. I'm not pursuing God. So that was me. That was my family. Mom was always in church. You know, I had some tough things happen to me as a kid. Grew up in a good family, a good home, but had some tough things that happened, things that I just hid and protected inside until later. It was affecting me, so I didn't do a very good job of hiding it, but nobody really knew what it was.
That stuff comes out later, doesn't it?
It does come out later. It does. It's you can't keep that inside forever. It winds up spilling out and damaging relationships and hurting people around you. And healing doesn't happen until it starts to come out and you start to deal with it. So, I got pretty rough, pretty tough, did a lot of things that, I kind of regret now. But God has provided ways to ask for forgiveness of those, mend relationships, and mentor others who are in situations like I was in to help them so they don't make some of the mistakes and cause some of the pain that I caused. And shout out to True North, man. That all happened after I came here and we started doing this deep dive. And I don't know if I need to go into that, but I mean, that's
how
where.
How about like your relationships outside of that? Like, so after the damage is kind of been done, talk about like either marriage, kids, and what that process looked like all before.
Oh yeah,
coming to True North.
My wife and I, we both had a child before we got married.
Okay.
We got connected on a blind date. It's kind of a whole different story, but we've been together ever since that blind date. It's just God got tired of waiting on me, so he's just like, hey, here's this girl. But I didn't really appreciate her at the time. God wasn't a part of my life, so how could I ever truly love her if I didn't have God being the center of it? But we marriage was pretty tough before Christ was in it. Like we loved each other. Divorce wasn't an option, so we weren't going to leave. But man, we were rough on each other without Christ in our lives. So man, my advice to everybody is get Jesus in your life quickly. Yeah, you want a good marriage.
Yeah.
That structure was set up for a reason. It never works without it.
Yeah.
But,
how many years were you guys not following God?
So I guess maybe a year after we got married, we started going to church. We lived in Broken Arrow then. When we moved back to Eufaula, we just stopped and fell into lake life. Drank all the time, partying with kids. It's so embarrassing to say, but seriously, like we would go to the lake and party and take our kids with us. And that's what everybody was doing, so we did too, and just completely forgot that I knew who Jesus was, completely forgot that he was a part of our lives, and everything that you can imagine that comes along with that kind of lifestyle came. It's a miracle that we're together, truly a miracle from God.
Wow. Yeah. So when did the awakening start to happen?
So we kind of started going back to church. My wife had a cousin who he died of this crazy rare brain cancer. Like we found out on a Wednesday that he stumbled at daycare, and by like Saturday he was gone. There's no research on it because usually by the time they find it, it's too late, and it's really sad, really tragic. But our kids were pretty young then, and she sat with him during all of that until he left, and God kind of became real to her in that moment as well. And she brought that back home with her, and we were like, we got to get our kids in church. We kind of had already thought we were too far gone. We couldn't be saved, but we wanted to get our kids in church. So we were going to a church, and it was just fine. We weren't getting a lot from it, but we knew that we should be there. And the church that I'm currently going to was a church plant in Eufaula, which I'd never heard of a church plant. It was inside of our high school that I grew up in. And I thought that was pretty weird. I didn't know any of this stuff, but I had met the pastor, and he had been inviting me over and over to come to church with him. And he was a cool guy, played college football. He was a tough dude. I mean, he was fun to talk to. I really liked him. And on their 1-year anniversary, I told my wife, I said, let's go to that church today just to support them. They made it a whole year. So I went, and we went. And it was just incredible. It was probably the first time I had ever been in a place where Holy Spirit was evident and moving. Didn't know how to process any of that. We went back out, sat in my wife's Jeep. It was her and my 2 sons and I, and we sat there just kind of quiet for a little while, and nobody was saying anything. And we're just sitting in the car, and we started talking, and all 4 of us, we all heard God say, stay. And we never left, and we've been leading and serving ever since then.
How many years has that been?
That's been 9 years.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
I mean, 9 years this October.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What did you see change in y'all's family from that?
Oh, wow. So once we acknowledged that there even was a Holy Spirit, right? And Jesus, God, the way that everything communicated with us, the way our lives started turning, we went from being pretty good people to being Christians. I started living it out, started walking it out. My oldest son wanted to get baptized, and I got to walk through the prayer of salvation with him, which was just really neat. And I mean, that's for any parent, that's one of those moments you never forget, right? Like, I don't remember everything from my wedding night, but I will not forget that day when my son received salvation. That was awesome. Everything just changed in our family. We started following it, started living it, started walking it out. My wife had been battling an addiction for years and years and years. This cold turkey quit in the middle of all of it. I don't know how to say it more than that. Like, we were going this way, and then we started going this way.
Yep.
Seriously, it was like we just did a 180, and we've never looked back. I mean, it hasn't been hard. Like, there have been temptations to go back to what we came from. I mean, all of that is still there. Even after all this time, I still get tempted to go do those things, but the reason to not do it is so good and it's so big, and life's just been better.
Yeah.
Our marriage has been saved. I have no doubt that we would not be together if it wasn't for Christ coming in. It was a big deal.
That's incredible.
It set me on a path of exploration too. So I was like, wow, this church is so cool. God is so cool. Jesus, he's really an awesome, awesome person. He was real. He wasn't just a story figure, right? So I started looking into all of that. Started, I'm fixing to go into how I met True North now. Is it too early?
Do it.
Okay. So my pastor, he really encouraged us to read our Bible. I'd never heard somebody say, hey, basically fact check me. I could be lying to you. I'm not, but you need to be reading your word for yourself. So I'm in my Bible. No, I'm not. I'm in the Bible app. I still wasn't opening up my Bible yet, but I was all over the Bible app. I mean, I was just eating for breakfast, lunch, and dinner devotionals.
Yeah.
And I came across Wild at Heart by John Eldredge, and I'd never heard of John or anything like that. And I went through this devotional, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So I did it again, like back to back. Like I think it took me 2 days, but I would just couldn't stop. I was just so into it. So I started looking for more Bible apps by John Eldredge or Wild at Heart, and I saw this little triangle, said True North on it, and I was like, oh, what are those? So I went and found one of those. I don't remember which Devo it was, but I found these guys were out of Oklahoma City. So I sent him an email, and about 5 minutes later, I got a phone call. And I cannot remember his name. Lives in Muskogee now. Tall.
Scott.
Thank
Crack,
you, Scott. Yes. So Scott calls me, and he was still with True North then. And I mean, we had a great conversation. There was a base camp coming up like 2 weeks later, and I was like, okay, I'll go to that. That sounds cool. And I called my pastor, and I was telling him about it. He's like, I haven't heard of True North, and I was like, well, it's kind of based off of John Eldredge, and he was like, oh, I'll go with you. And
that's cool.
A couple other guys went, and we went to True North, and man, I don't know if we're ready to go into all that yet, or if you have questions from before, but that first base camp is when God became real to me. Mm-hmm. So, man, anybody.
Is that Anadarko?
It was, yeah. So anybody who's been to a base camp, they know there's levels to it. Like you can't just go to one. Like there's so many things to unpack when you start going through everything from day one of your life to that moment when God becomes real. There's so many things to unpack.
Yeah.
I was really just having a blast. I mean, it was so much fun. And we were in one of the prayer sessions with John, and when they pray, we pray. We close our eyes and all this, and I'm sitting there and we're praying, and they're talking about new names and about who God called us to be, and I hear this word, I hear somebody talking, and I look at my pastor, my buddy Chad, he's sitting beside me, and I said, "Did you hear that?" And he's like, "No, shh, we're praying." We're praying, and I was like, "All right," and then a little bit later, I heard it again, and I was like, "Dude, did you hear that?" He's like, "No." Yeah, I heard it a third time, and I was like, "You had to have heard that," and he goes, "That's for you." And so I haven't read the book of Samuel at this point, right? Like I'm still in my Bible. I didn't know that things like this had happened before. It was God. He was talking to me, and he called me a name, and he spoke to me audibly twice in my life. And both times he said the same thing to me in different ways. But this name was a part of it, and he called me son. And the third time that I heard him say it, I knew he was talking to me. And I had maybe cried 5 times in my whole life. Like I was very prideful, like John Wayne style. Like I'm not crying. Right. And there were tears and snot hanging out of my face on the floor. It was just nasty, ugly crying. And it meant so much to me because the conflict and the trouble that I've had with my own father.
Yeah.
I never thought that I would be worthy to be called son. My goodness. And whenever my heavenly Father called me that, I didn't think it was possible, first off. It became real. Yeah. That was a big moment for me. I think about that moment almost every day. Yeah. That was 2017. It's just, I've been kind of sold out on True North and Christ ever since then.
Yeah. Can you describe maybe just even... Can you describe the emotion behind being called son and gaining that identity?
Oh, if you want to see me cry again, right? Being a dad's tough. Being a father here on this earth is tough. I mean, we're going to hurt our kids, right? There's just too many things out there. There's too many opportunities. And my dad wasn't really a follower of Christ. He believes in Jesus, but not an active believer. And with the spot that I was in, and the injuries that I had in my life and the anger that I carried around, I certainly rebelled against him all the time. So we had a lot of conflict. So being called son was a word that I usually associated with I'm in trouble. Never realizing, at this point in my life, whenever that happened, like I knew God was real. I knew Jesus was real. I knew Holy Spirit was real. I knew all these things. I was in the process of learning it anyway. But whenever he spoke to me, it became, when it became real, like I keep saying that same phrase, but I don't know a better way to describe it. Like it became real. Like I don't have to stick my hand in fire twice to know that it's hot. God is real, and there's nothing in this world that could ever convince me that he's not. But he's not way off in another place. He was right there with me. He spoke so loud that it was deafening to me and nobody else could hear it.
Yeah. At a Frontier recently, we shared a message about, one guy asked this other guy, like, do you believe in God? He says, I don't believe in God. I know God. And it's just funny. The hot stove was one of the analogies he used. He said, if you've never touched a hot stove, you can believe that it's hot, but the people that have touched it know that it's hot.
Yeah, it's a great way to describe it.
They've experienced it. And what you're saying here is like, as soon as he speaks to you, you know.
Yeah.
You have a knowing.
Yep. I thought I would be nervous to tell people that. I don't. They can think I'm crazy all they want. I will accept that form of crazy.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
That's beautiful.
It's amazing. And he's talked to me in a lot of ways, but that moment in particular was just, I needed it.
Anything else out of that first camp for you?
Oh, you know what? I don't really remember the rest of the first camp.
You didn't need anything else, huh?
No.
That was all you needed.
Yep. I remember it was a good time. We had a lot of fun. I think I came back to one like a month later, or maybe 2 months later, whenever the next one was. Brought a big group with me. That one moment was just it for me. I've got a notebook full of notes, but all I remember is that moment.
Just describe that. Describe going home, having experienced this, and your ability to wrangle the guys in. Like, what was driving that?
Still that moment, right? Like, it goes back to the fire's hot thing. It was just evident on me as well. I didn't know that. That's, things other people will say to me like, man, something's different. Like, you've changed. My wife had noticed that I had changed. Sounds like a lot for a 3-day weekend. But, I did. I was changed. I was, the things that I was professing to believe, I was now acting out. Like, I was really trying to live for Christ. And that's contagious when you do that.
Yeah.
People that knew me from before were like, something's different. Well, hey, that gives you a great opportunity to talk about it. And it's always hard to go back to your hometown, to go back to people who knew you and to tell them about it. But I was so excited about what was going on. I had the courage to do what I usually didn't have the courage to do, which is to talk to these people.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stop talking about it. So I think some people went to shut me up, and some people went because they wanted to see what I was so excited about.
That's beautiful.
And a lot of guys came with me. I think we took 14 or 15 to the next camp, and we did that for a while. And we took half the guys in Eufaula. Other churches in my church, it wasn't just mine. We were taking everybody we could.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. So what's the rest of the journey been like? What was next after that?
Okay, so I thought, all right, I'm going to get these other guys to come to True North because they need to experience what I experienced at that first one. But every time I came to True North, that next level, I was unpacking something else. And I was getting to know a lot of guys. And it was really neat to start having friends, to see people, and because they're walking out the same thing. They understand the verbiage of what you're talking about because they've been there, and they're like, yeah, I've experienced this, and I've had to deal with this. And Trey Dixon, he gave me a call one day, and he said, hey, we were praying about people that might want to come in and start serving because it was starting to really, really grow. Like they were doing a couple camps a year, but they were getting really, really big. And he's like, do you want to serve? And I instantly wanted to say no because that was scary. But I had just recently been through something with God where I'm on a mission trip where I told him I would never tell him no again. And then a couple months later, Trey said that. So I'm like, okay, I'll do that. So I went and was going to shadow under Chris LaRue's first base camp. And it was the one that we did the recordings at. I don't know if, were you guys at that one? It was.
I was, yeah.
Yeah, it was a big one. It was a really big one. So I'm like, sure, I'll be a shadow for camp director at that. And I thought, all right, I'm nervous, but I've got this.
Yeah.
Then he calls me and he's like, hey, we were praying. And we're praying about responders, and we all got your name.
Yeah.
And I'm like, did you really? I mean, or you just calling me out of convenience because I'm already going to be there. I've got all this doubt, all these things in my mind. I'm trying to talk myself out of it. And I was like, man, I really don't have a story to tell. And then he was like, everybody does. And he's like, I really don't. So he's like, well, I'm going to set up a Zoom call. So I don't remember who all was on it, but I know he was, and I know Chris Webb was. And I remember Chris because I just love Chris. And he was really a big part of this with me early on, just walking beside me, such a gentle spirit and a good guy. But so we all get on this Zoom call, and Trey's like, just tell me your story. So I just kind of start telling a version that I was comfortable telling. And he was like, that's really good, Nick. He was very encouraging. And he goes, but that's not your story. I was like, that's kind of rude. And he goes, man, we prayed about it. And he said, there's something else. And I don't know why I did in that moment, but the part of my story that started whenever I was very young, this something terrible that happened to me that should have never happened to me. Nobody knew about it except for my wife, and that's because she's just gifted with discernment and just knew and rode me till I told her. I just spilled it all out. And Trey's like, that's it. You're going to say that at base camp. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And he's like, I thought you weren't going to tell God no. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, we can do this. And that was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. That was the hardest, going back through that trauma. I would record myself over and over on my phone and play it back, try to get through talking this out loud, and it was like reliving it all over again. Once again, not a crier, but I'm crying all the time now. Like I was driving and trying to listen to it, and I have to pull off the road. Like my eyes almost swole shut. It was tough. My gosh, it was tough. But I also never had healing a single day of my life until I started saying it out loud. I started talking about it, sorting through it, and God's done a great thing in me since then. So I get to base camp, and I meet Chris LaRue. We had never met till then, which I love him now. He's one of my dearest friends, and kind of an intimidating guy, you know, if you don't know him. I mean, he's very serious, right? He's military, but he's got this big heart, and he's like, yeah, you got this. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I do or not. And then I see how many guys are at camp. It's a huge, huge camp, and they're videoing, and I'm like, Trey's responding at this one. Brad Montgomery's responding at this one. I'm like, I can't go up and talk in front of all these people. These are like the legends of True North talking, right? I'm so scared, you know, but are puffing back down there. Sorry. Like they were the OGs, right? And I'm like, I can't follow those guys up here and talk in front of all these men and say this. And I honestly was fixing to leave. Like I headed to the side door. LaRue stopped me. He's like, where are you going? I was like, I'm going home, man. He's like, no, man, you got to stay. You got to do this. Somebody needs to hear it. And well, I did. I got up there and I told my story. I don't remember anything from being on stage. I was so just panicked and freaked out. I remember going up and I remember leaving. And it was a neat part, but also a horrible part. This thing that I thought would never happen to anyone else. There were 24 guys from that camp between that first or that second day whenever I told my story until the end. That came up to me that same thing had happened to them, and they had never told anybody about it. They were just holding it in and letting it wreck their lives like I had been doing. But 24, wow! And it's been that way every time. I've told that story a lot now, and 3 different continents, I think 7 or 8 different countries. Like I've shared this story in different versions of it over and over, and it's pretty tragic how common it is. But anyway. There's that. I think I might have got off track from where you're asking me to go there, but
that was really good. Yeah, so you responded. Mm-hmm. You did the thing. And now you're being invited into more leadership.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, it was pretty quick after that. They were like, "Hey, we're thinking about starting a base camp somewhere besides Anadarko, and we want you to lead it." I said, "Okay." So we went to Vian, I believe. Yeah, it was Vian.
Yeah.
And that was so much fun. I was so nervous and so excited. I think that's the first time I had met you. You were at that one. Man, it was. No, wait, you directed that one, didn't you?
Yeah, I directed the first one in Vian.
You did, and then I
you directed
responded
the second
at it.
one,
Yeah,
I believe.
Yeah, I had to respond again, and I thought, oh yeah, I can do it. It'll be easy. The next time, it was not easy. The next time, so I was there with you, and then I led the next one. It was. So, man, after that one, then we did two there, and they wound up closing that campground down, which is kind of sad, man. That was such a neat place.
Yeah,
It was a cool spot.
It was so cool, and there were some neat stories that came out of there, like the story that we told about the soldier that got healed there. You know, that came from the campfire at that one, and then we wind up the next one that we started up was Spring Valley.
Yeah.
And I've been there a few times. So I think altogether, I don't know, I was trying to count on the way up here today. I think I've directed maybe 7 or 8 camps, probably been to 12 or more. I don't know. It's been a lot. I can't keep up with them.
Yeah.
How many ascents have you been to?
Just one.
Just one ascent.
Man, and I've been wanting to go back, but with work and travel, it's been so hard to get back to one, which I know is an excuse. I mean, the devil doesn't want me to go to another ascent. It's always been a scheduling conflict.
Yeah. So, in your responding story, how you've done it a bunch now.
Yeah.
So, how has it changed over the years?
Sure it has.
Because have you done different sessions than what you did the first time, or have you always done the same ones?
I've done wound and sonship several times. The last camp that I was at, what was it I did?
Did you do beauty?
I think I did. I think whoever was supposed to do it wound up not coming, so we just kind of changed it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it is a beautiful story, and when you see what God's done in it. So at first, my story was very much about my trauma. It was very much about my wound, and it's not anymore. Like that part's still there. My story now is about a victory that came later, about a transformation of a man, of a family. Well, yeah, when you ask if it's changed, of course it has.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's dive into, how you're now bringing your strength to the beauty.
Okay. So somewhere there's a shift that happened in my mind, and I don't know exactly when it happened. Like I've got these big moments, these big encounters that I've happened with God. But somewhere I quit focusing on what happened, and I started noticing how far God had brought me. So I still don't enjoy telling that part of my story. Like even after all these years, I don't enjoy that. Right. But it eliminates a spot where my enemy can attack me. If I hold that in, that's a playground for him, and he can just wreak havoc on me. And I know that he can because it's painful. And he gets to have fun with that. So I don't focus on that part of it. God took a man that was broken and hurting and angry, and he filled him full of joy, and he filled him full of happiness. Man, he gave me an opportunity to restore my marriage because it was not good before Christ came into our lives. And even after he came in, it wasn't good. Like I loved Jesus, but I was still living this other life. Like I'd never really separated that at that point. He helped me restore things with my kids. Like my oldest son, he still remembers sometimes me losing my temper, some things that I've done, getting drunk and just being stupid. He's healed that and restored a lot of that. My youngest son doesn't have any memories of it. God has just came in and just restored not just me, but our whole family. When I think about the victory, when I think about how much he's done for me, I want to go share it with people. So I went from being nervous about directing camps to be excited about directing camps just because I got to meet so many people. I got to be on every team as a director, right? I got to be on the prayer team. I got to be on the greeting. I mean, I got to do everything. And I love that because I love interacting with people. I like hearing their stories. I like helping them walk through it and telling them, hey, I know who God created you to be. And if you don't know, I'm going to tell you because it's a big deal and you need to find out. I like walking that out with people. And the more I do it, the more opportunities God gives me to do it too. He's got me doing it everywhere now.
Yeah. Yeah. So, talk a little bit about your relationship with your wife.
Oh man.
And yeah.
We have, have you guys ever done the Enneagram?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I thought this was the silliest thing in the world. But as a leadership team at our church, we did the Enneagram test because it kind of helps with how to communicate with somebody. Like if I make a mistake, just tell me. I want to hear about it. But if somebody with a different personality, if you come at them like that, they may just shut down and crumble, right? So it's how to handle people with their personality types. Well, my wife and I, we are the worst combination. It says we're either the most passionate or we are the most most in conflict, which is you think about the healthy and the unhealthy stages of your life before Christ. We weren't going to get divorced, but oh my gosh, it was like a tornado in our home all the time. We were just constantly fighting. It was just such a toxic relationship. It's toxic to other people around us. Now it's not.
Yeah.
So she is my best friend.
Yeah.
I'm her best friend. We have so much fun together. Like I hope that everybody else has a marriage like we have now. But God's at the top of it.
Yeah.
Then it's us. Then it's our kids.
Yeah.
And nothing comes in between that. Our kids don't come in between that. Work doesn't come in between that. Nothing comes in there. And man, we date now. It's like it gets better all the time.
You know what's interesting about this, the Enneagram is I heard that it was originally created as a sin identifier. And so what it's actually identifying mostly in that is our false self.
Oh yeah.
And so if you're looking at, which the false self can sometimes just be how we act out, and it's really how we act without God, which is sin.
Yeah.
And so talking about how it's either high conflict or high passion, whenever it's without God, it's going to be high conflict
Big time.
with where you guys were at. And now that you've brought God into it, it's that high passion.
Yep.
And you guys have the perseverance and to get through a lot, and you're probably a pretty darn unstoppable force now.
Man, it's fun.
Yeah.
God, it's so worth it. I'm so glad I didn't give up early in the hard part because God has just made it so good. I enjoy being married.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, anything else about True North you wanted to dive into? Because I'm looking forward to diving into your missions work now.
Man, do you guys have a favorite base camp that you've been to?
As far as venue
No, like a camp in particular.
I'd say that buy-in camp that you directed, that was the last one that we did there. That's probably one of my favorite ones.
It was a powerful one.
It was a very small venue, but I had some family there that I had been working on getting to come forever. They had a very good weekend, life-changing experience, and then to such an intimate group of guys because it was small.
Yeah.
So many of those guys followed through and got connected with community.
Yeah.
Which I think, and initially that's when we were doing like a bunch of numbers, but we were starting to add camps. We had big camps traditionally, but we were adding camps, so the camps were getting smaller. It was kind of like this thing of, well, I don't know if this is good to have such a small camp, but as far as guys getting connected with community, which is the thing, like you have to get connected with community.
That's the heart behind it,
camp.
right?
Yes, we have to do this thing together, not alone. We can't do it alone. And so I think as far as like success, family was there and that was awesome, but like just following those guys that were at that camp, almost all of them got connected.
That's awesome.
And so in my mind, forever, it was like, I don't care how small the camp is, like as long as those dudes get connected. And so in many ways, I think that buy-in is one of my favorite ones, because that's where the idea of like, we can't be tied to, big numbers. Yeah. Like we want to be effective.
Yeah.
And have lasting change. And
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got two that are coming to mind. My second one that I ever went to, I brought about, I think it was like 12 or 13 guys.
Mm-hmm.
It was before I was working with True North. It was actually like I had just been brought up as a potential candidate to be hired with True North, and so we're like just weeks before maybe that happening, and I was bringing all these guys, and the group of guys was just so fun. They're just hilarious guys, and so like the excitement of them going through it for the first time, but then also like just the nights in the cabins and everybody being bunked together, and you know you'd lay down at 10:30, but you'd stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning, telling like just laughing and it would like just go between laughter and like tears and laughter and tears, and it was just beautiful, really dynamic group of guys that made that one really special.
Was that at Anadarko?
That was at Anadarko, and then one that sticks out to me as well was August of 2020, our first one after COVID. Because we had to cancel the spring camps. And then August comes, and we did that one down at Lake Texoma. And it was interesting because like the politics were heating up, COVID was heating up, and there was a lot of doubt. Like people were questioning whether we should have the camp. A lot of people backed out. And there's just all these months of like unsettledness, and like we weren't doing what felt like we were getting called to do. But we stepped into that, and it was actually our first one to show the updated videos that Eldridge had put out previously. And so going through, so the combination of like being back in that environment with guys, and people aren't talking about COVID, they're not talking about politics, they're just like so relieved to be free of that and away for the weekend with a bunch of good dudes. And then like for me, that camp was the most empathy I've ever felt. And for me, it's a little different than other people, because like I spend a lot of time like building the presentation and going through Eldridge's videos. That, I mean, it was like a 10-year gap from the old ones we were sharing to this new one. And the stuff he was saying in there was stuff that it had never been presented before. And to my knowledge, had never been spoken of anywhere to speak to the hearts of men. I mean, talking about like same-sex attraction and where the root of that is, like that's a new thing for True North. You know, the old videos didn't have that, and it didn't address that in the hearts of men. And what we've seen come out of that is so many men coming forward, just like what you said, those 24 men that didn't know other people were going through it. The same-sex attraction stuff of guys coming forward like, hey, this is a real issue for me. And people seeing people being broken free of that. And so that weekend, I just remember sitting there watching the videos, hearing these new things come out, and just weeping. Because like I don't know who it was for exactly, but it was breaking something inside of me, like an empathetic sort of way. And I love crying. Like, dude, whenever it's because of God, whenever like I feel like God speaks to me through allowing me to cry and feel that emotion. And it's just like, it was such a beautiful weekend for that to happen. And like knowing who was at that camp, and so many guys, that was their first camp. And looking at where they are now, I'm like, that was a huge camp. Because going into that, our prayer team was a little bit shaky. Those guys were a little bit afraid of the COVID. And it was tough. And we had guys back out. And we were like, man, God, send us. We need to really build up our prayer team, because like we were kind of out on an island with this thing.
Well, and I know I just got done talking about how numbers shouldn't matter, but I think too we were affirmed that like 74 dudes showed up. You know,
in the heat of the summer.
In the heat of the summer,
it was like 100 degrees every day.
After COVID, you know, when we're, you know, some guys were wearing masks, most guys weren't, but we were taking temperatures and all the precautionary things that that came with COVID.
Yeah.
And
I think
and
we
then
were
had a
birthed
great
like
weekend.
3 or 4 prayer directors that are like, I mean, they basically float across the floor. Like they're so like that was like their first camp to come to. Like
Yeah.
incredible men that are instrumental to our prayer team. Like God brought them that weekend.
Yeah.
And so that was probably that one might be my favorite one.
I think the very next camp from that was at Camp Wow, I think. And I remember being at that one, and I don't think I led that one. I think I was just there serving at it. But it was so nice because the guys turned their phones off.
Yeah.
We did not have to, people were so tired of the media and the drama and the conspiracies, whether is this true or not true, and people were tired of it. This is even during football season. They turned their phones off. Everybody. It was so nice.
Yeah. And that culture is like maintained. You know, I don't think I ever really recognized it before 2020. Like it probably still was happening then, but like as controversial as the world has been for the past 4 years, you get to camp and it's just peaceful. Like the guys you would expect to sit and talk about that stuff, for some reason, they're distracted enough by God to not dive into that stuff.
Absolutely.
And it's just beautiful. So that's our promise to you. If you come to base camp, like you can get some real relief from all the clatter.
I think my favorite camp, probably the one I was talking to you about earlier when the ice at the end, it was at Spring Valley. And God, it was so cold. I was telling him there's a couple things happened at that one that you guys probably would have never let me direct a camp again if you'd have known what I did. So I'll tell you now. I think it was the very first night this guy is standing there and he's looking angry, and you could tell he was probably a soldier. And I go over there and I start talking to him, and I was like, "Hi, I'm Nick, camp director, you know, kind of," and was visiting, and he's like, "I don't want to be here." I was like, "Hey, I get it, man. What's going on?" So he started talking to me, and he just opened up and told me his story. And he, somebody told me that he was a Navy SEAL. I don't know that he was or not, but we're just going to pretend that he was there with Eddie Penny and that he was a Navy SEAL.
That sounds good.
I know he was Navy, but he starts telling me the story, and after combat and all the things that he had done, it just really changed him. And he comes home, and he did some pretty terrible things to his wife. And this woman, I don't know who she is, but I pray that this woman is in ministry sharing her faith right now. She tells him, "You're not the man that I married, but I'm going to fight for our marriage. You're always wanting to fight. You go fight for our marriage too. You got to go to True North. You got to go to church. If not, I'm taking our kids. You're not going to hurt our family, and I'm leaving." And I was like, wow. And he was like, "Man, I've been such a piece of crap to her, you know." And he starts telling me the stories and the things that he had done. And I looked at him and I said, "Man," I said, "she's giving you a reset button. She's giving you an opportunity to fix what you've done for God to come into this. If you don't go fight for her in your marriage, you really are a piece of crap." And I was like, I probably shouldn't have said that. I've got my True North staff shirt on, and this guy could probably beat me to death. And but he just looked at me for a minute. You could tell he'd never heard somebody say something like that to him before, and he just walked off. And I was like, crap, he's going to leave. I'm never going to see this guy again. Over the course of the weekend, we had a few conversations, and he's one of the guys that got baptized. I mean, the Spring Valley, it was so cold. Like there was ice on the banks on a moving stream. It was that cold. And I watched the video again this morning. It was just so cool getting out there in that water. But that was one of the biggest transformations I've seen on somebody. It was like watching somebody change colors. It was so different. Like he was not the same guy on Sunday afternoon that he was on Thursday afternoon. It was really incredible. And God, that's the second time God spoke to me audibly, was at that one. I was going to be responding on that Sunday about sonship, and for some reason I was having a hard time. I was outside feeling every insecurity in the world, and God spoke to me just as clear as he possibly could. And I recognized at this time, I'm like, thank you, I needed that. And then he sent Josh, our prayer director, out, and Josh came out to me and said exactly what God had said to me. And I'm like, I heard you. And he was like, but I need to make sure you believe me. And I was like, I love that. Thank you so much. Like it was instant confirmation. Like Josh is walking towards me as soon as I had heard this. And then the last guy that came out to get baptized, he came up to me and he goes, I got to tell you, man, he goes, I'm a drug addict before this camp and I'm not now. And he gave me his drugs. He gave me his paraphernalia. He gave me everything. And I've got my drug breaking hammer in my truck. And we went out there and we just smashed all of his paraphernalia. And I went and flushed the other stuff down the toilet. And I was like, probably something else I shouldn't have done as camp director.
I thought
Sorry,
I saw
guys.
a weird animal out there last time. It had like 3 eyes and 7 legs.
Yeah, well, they probably wondered what was in their septic
Weird.
tank. But
yeah, I thought it was my imagination.
Dude, I loved it though. I was like, man, come on. What an incredible way to finish a camp. And then that was the first camp that I'd share my story at where nobody came to me and had the same thing. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'm going to get released in this. I don't have to do it anymore. And everything's done and we're freezing, just wet as all get out from being in the water, going up to break down. And there's a guy standing by my truck. And I go over, start talking to him. And that was the one at that camp that had the same story. And we exchanged numbers, and I got to kind of walk with him in that. And then he finally got to a Christian counselor. And so for me, that camp, just because of that last day, that's my favorite camp, without a doubt, even more than the first one when God just revealed himself to me. I loved that camp.
We were close to canceling that one too.
It was cold.
At the ice.
Yep.
Like we had like 12 or 15 people cancel and it was already a small camp. I think we only had like 35 people that were supposed to be coming, and like 10 to 12 of them.
The
like,
people that
canceled.
came were hungry. Like you weren't going to stop them from being there. They wanted to be there.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful, Nick. I would love to dive into what you're doing now and all the mission work and your new position and all that stuff. So how did this get started? Introduce us to that.
This got started because of COVID too.
Yeah.
In 2020, so people started coming to church with us. They were Filipino missionaries, and they had come home to visit family. COVID hit, and they couldn't get back to the Philippines, so they just stayed and became friends with this guy. And he was the director for Asia for Designs for Hope. And we became friends. I met the director, went and traveled, did a couple of mission trips with him, and we went to Africa together last year, and we went to Ethiopia and Kenya, went to several different places in both of those countries. And then I got back, and they offered me the position of director for Africa for Designs for Hope. And it's really pretty awesome. He said, man, he goes, I believe that we serve a great God. And if this is something that you're supposed to do, he goes, I believe that he's going to talk to your wife about it. He's going to talk to your pastor about it. He goes, I don't think that this is just a me and you conversation. So pray about this. Talk to the people in your life that really care about you and that know you. I got confirmation back through both of them. And even with True North, like I loved directing camps here. I hadn't had a shadow ever at True North as for camp director until the camp following that. And I hadn't told anybody that this was even offered to me. I was just sitting on it. And I was like, God, I said, I can't walk away and just leave this without somebody else being able to help. I can't leave a hole anywhere. And that was when Matt Ford came and directed, and I was just like, I knew that he was going to be a good camp director. I had no doubt in my mind, and so I felt like I had confirmation there. And then he spoke to my wife. She was like, I do not want you to do this. She goes, I promise you, God is telling me that this is what you're supposed to do because I don't want this.
Wow.
Yeah. And it came through my pastor too. And of course, her heart's changed now. I took her with me, and if you ever go to Africa, you're going to want to go back. It's just different. It's nobody goes to Africa and it's like, yeah, I really want to go back again. Everybody wants to go back.
Yeah.
But so anyway, now I'm the director for Designs for Hope.
Yeah. So what is Designs for Hope?
Designs for Hope is an organization that was started by a group of engineers right outside of Birmingham in a town called Trussville there in Alabama. And they used their big brains that God gave them to come up with solutions for places that have not. Let me give an example instead of trying to describe it. So in the Rift Valley there in Kenya, there's an area where there's a little church that got planted there maybe 75, 80 years ago. And then even the people that planted it never went back. Like nobody goes back here. It's very hard to get to. The water that comes out of the ground is 150 degrees. It's very, very deep. So drilling is a problem. Pumping water is a problem. So these people that live in this arid, hot climate where it's so hard to get to, if people won't go there to visit, you can imagine they're not going there to take resources too. So it's hard to grow crops without water. These people are walking walking 7, 8, 10 miles in different directions. The ladies actually are doing all of this in the morning. So Designs for Hope, through the church that is planted there, they came in and they designed a well. And we actually got Oklahoma City Pumps here at Oklahoma City. They built the pump for it. We try to do everything in country, but with this, it was specialized. So they built a pump that would pump this 150-degree water. We designed a solar system that would operate the pump. So it's all set up, and we all did that in country. So if something needs to be repaired, it can be repaired. So we pumped this 150-degree water out of this, I want to say it was a 100-meter deep well. It was pretty deep. Wow. And it pumps it up into this big reservoir, and it's hot. Like I climbed up on top of it. Steam's just pouring out of it. And then it goes, I don't know how many meters, but it's give or take around 100 yards, and we buried the pipe going down the hill to the bottom to a kiosk where the church is, and it's cool to the touch when it comes out. It cools as it goes down. This is what Designs for Hope does. And one of the things that they do, so they design this whole system so that people can have water there, and there's enough water to irrigate crops. There's enough water for people to drink, but they have to come through the church to get it. So the church doesn't put a lock on it, but it's there. The pastor lives there. It's a full-time conversation with, hey, you guys have water. Absolutely. God did this, and it's yours. You don't have to believe in him to have it. This water's for you. But it's amazing what's happened in that area since then. Like the church is just growing. People are thriving. It's just, I don't know. When the average cause of death is dysentery, because you don't have clean drinking water, and the average length of life is around 50 years because you just don't have clean drinking water. It's a really simple solution. So we do a lot of that. The biggest thing that we do is pastor training. We have a lot of underground missionaries that work in areas where we can't go. Our goal is to reach the lost. So there are really, really, really good missionary groups that are working all over the world, working in the slums, in the big cities, and different places where people need to hear the gospel. Out of the 9 billion people on planet Earth, 3 billion have not heard the name of Jesus. It's not believers. Those are people that have not heard the name of Jesus. The Joshua Project is a really neat website that keeps up with all of those statistics. So 1/3 of the planet doesn't know who Christ is. Yeah. So those are the areas that we go to. And most of those are dangerous. They're almost completely Muslim. It's illegal to be a Christian, things like that. So I can't walk in and preach the word of God. But if we have somebody who is from there, who speaks the language, they look the part, they are the part, we'll get them out. We'll train them in Bible training, pastor training. We'll equip them to go back in, and they can share the gospel in their homes and in their hometowns. So we do a whole lot of that, which I love. That's my favorite part, because it's turning on a light in a dark room, right? Jesus is the light. You go in the dark. I can't go there, but I can help somebody else go there. And for God to even consider using any of us in that role it's an honor, and it is exciting. Yeah. And I'm humbled by it every single day. I cry and pray for these people every day. And we're all over Ethiopia. We're working into Somali right now. We're doing some translations on some materials to get in there. Got to share the gospel in Uganda last December on a mountaintop with the Batwa people who have been displaced, and they were an unreached people group. Nobody there had heard the name of Christ, and it was really neat getting to preach to them. And we had a bunch of people come to Christ, and they're being discipled now. They're still a part of it, and there's a church plant there, and it's exciting.
That's cool.
Hey, you opened up a can here. I could talk about this all day.
Yeah.
But so we're a multifaceted organization, but those are the two primary things that we do, is pastor training and coming up with practical ways, engineering ways to work through the church to spread the gospel.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So what's it mean for you?
What's it mean for me?
You and your family to step into this journey of this directorship? And
man, it's exciting. It's rewarding. It's tough. I've traveled over there quite a bit, so there's loss of income, but you trust in God in that, right? My wife got to go with me to Ethiopia last month. She's going to get to go back to Uganda with me in June, which is really good, because she's a better missionary than I am. So I love that she gets to go with me. But it means me being gone quite a bit. Some of the places I go, I can't take my family. Where I'm going to be going in a couple of weeks, I can't take my family with me. So it's tough, but it's rewarding, and it's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I believe in the Great Commission. I believe that God called every one of us to go and share the gospel. I don't believe there's anybody exempt from that. And when you talk about the four corners of the world, the first one is in your home, and the last corner is a place you've never been. I think that everybody needs to be sharing the word wherever they are. And I started doing it right here, and now God's given me a chance to go do it somewhere else, and I'm excited about that. But yeah, so it's tough for my family, and it's exciting for my family, and they're all really proud of me, and they're all very supportive, and they want to go do it too.
Yeah. I remember your phone call to us. You're like, he called and you're like,
Hang on, before you say that, I called and hung up about 3 times. It was like I couldn't. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Nick is like, this is the hardest phone call I've had to make. And I'm like, what did you do? I'm like, oh, what did you do, Nick? What are you talking about, man? And then he's like, I've been offered this role as director, and you know, I'm going to be going over to Africa quite often, and I don't want to commit to anything for you guys, and let you guys down, because I'm going to be pretty, you know, engaged with this. And I'm like, dude, that's awesome. What are you
But call me if you need me.
Yeah.
Immediately he's like,
But call me, because if I'm home,
if I'm home, I'll be at camp.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. I'll be a full-time stand-in anytime.
Yeah. And man, that's so cool, and it's so easy to trust you with that as well. Like just for you to know that we just need you. We don't need you doing anything. We just need you and your influence and you as a person. Because anytime you walk into the room, you make an impact.
Thank you.
And it's going to continue to be that way. Actually, you'll probably even be a deeper impact as you grow in this journey, and you're taking huge risks with God, and that's really cool. Really cool.
Man, I love True North. I do. It's True North didn't save my family. God did. Man, I came to know God through True North.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I would have stuck with the church that I'm in now or anything else if I hadn't come here. And the way True North is set up and designed, the way that it breaks down barriers, the way that it's just like, hey, you know what? We're going to step through that door of pride that is holding your life back. It's just amazing how you guys, and with John Eldridge and everybody that's involved, it's I've never experienced anything, especially in our culture here in America, with the battle that our men are up against, that kicks that down, that goes through those barriers the way that this does.
Yeah. So good.
It saved me.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Love it.
You guys got anything else? Anything on your heart else you wanted to share? You're hoping to share?
Yeah, I'll just thank you guys, man. You guys are incredible.
Yeah.
Keep doing everything that you're doing.
Yeah. Thanks, man. And thank you. You've served in massive ways.
Thank you.
And you always have a home at True North. It's been cool to have you on the podcast.
Thanks.
I don't foresee this being the last podcast you're on with us.
I hope to come back and tell stories from overseas.
Yeah, man. And we just we'll bless you. I'm sure our True North community is going to hear more about the times that you are going over on mission. And I know you're good about reaching out for prayer, and we'll continue sharing that with others as you go into those situations. And
Thank
we're
you
just
so
believing
much.
God's going to be with you. We bless those trips. We bless you. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, buddy. Love you.
Love you too, man. Love you, brother.
Love you.